My name is Frances Jones. I'm a graduate student in the department, and I'm a geology major, and my thesis is focusing on monitoring and accelerating CO2 uptake into mine tailings. And I'm in the final year of my thesis. So my research was primarily going to be field-based. Our plan was to kind of use techniques common in the soil sciences known as eddy covariance and dynamic closed chambers. And so usually those are set up in agricultural settings to measure carbon fluxes, but we were gonna borrow those techniques and basically use them on a mine site to measure uptake of CO2 into mine tailings. Originally, the plan was to go to 2 field sites in summer of 2020. The first was a field site up in the Yukon, Atlin, British Columbia. It's just south of the Yukon. And then the second field site was going to be in the Southern Hemisphere at an active mine. And so that was supposed to happen in May of 2020. So like kind of right before, right after the start of the pandemic. So that definitely got derailed. When COVID hit, we very quickly realized that like international travel wasn't going to be on the table kind of that year, we assumed. And so we started planning. Our plan B became whether we could get to sites within Canada. But even like in the summer of 2020, like a lot of places were closed even within Canada. Like you couldn't go to the Yukon until like June of that year. And so there's really not much in terms of sites for us within British Columbia that would be appropriate. So we really just were like kind of waiting and hoping that at least the Yukon would open up. And thankfully it did. And then for me, at least, I started maybe thinking of some lab-based experiments that I could do as well. Because part of my thesis is on accelerating uptake. And so there's some things you can do in a lab. They're definitely like secondary thoughts. It wasn't really a plan of my thesis. So yeah, definitely a lot of adapting. The Yukon opened up in, I think it was July of 2020. And so we ended up doing fieldwork in August of 2020 up in the Yukon. But it still is not ideal because we really wanted to go to an active mine site, but this was like, one of our sites that we worked on it's a natural analog. So it's not actually a mine site. It's like kind of this natural version of what a mine would become if you carbonated it. And then in 2021, we went back to that same site. And then we went to a second field site, which was an old, like inactive mine. So the mine had been closed for 30 years. And that's called a legacy tailings facility. And so they were okay as field sites, but definitely not ideal for us, but we're still very grateful that we did end up getting to do field work. So that was nice. We definitely did like the COVID paperwork or like field plan that I think that UBC had mandated at the time. I can't exactly remember because this would have been in 2020. I mean, we were lucky that it was just me and my field partner and Martine. And so it was really only the 2 of us. And because we were so worried about kind of spreading COVID to the local or like to the community, it's a very small community up there. It was like 300 people. And so we were very cautious about like not really, going anywhere that we didn't need to go. And we wore masks everywhere when we were in town. So it definitely, I think it's hard not really being able to interact with these communities as much as you would like to. So that's kind of the one downside really of doing fieldwork. Well, there's many downsides of doing fieldwork during COVID, but that was kind of the big one that we noted is it was hard to like, normally you go up to build a relationship with the towns you work in, but we didn't really get to do that the first year. Yeah, we ended up giving a talk at the end of our field season to the community, which was nice. I think we did that in both 2020 and 2021. And then in 2021, things were a bit more relaxed. The data we got was good, but because these sites were so old, they're not really taking up CO2 anymore. I'm talking about the legacy mine site. And so really the goal of our research would be to use this equipment to measure an uptake of CO2 into the tailings. But because the site was so old, we weren't really measuring that. And so it kind of became more of just like methods validation for using this equipment instead of like the goal of actually measuring this uptake, if that makes sense. Hopefully I'm explaining that well. Yeah, and then all the lab work I ended up doing ended up being kind of not what I expected at the start of my thesis either. So my thesis looks very, very different from the start. I really think kind of there weren't a lot of positives, but I guess maybe the one I can think of is I've been working from home more than I used to pre-pandemic. I'm sure everyone is working from home more. And I found that is very nice, that I kind of really enjoy I guess now it's a hybrid balance. I like working from home, but I don't like to do it all the time. So it's kind of nice that the pandemic has promoted work from home life a little bit more. Yeah, I guess the other thing is I also got to see a lot more of the Yukon than I originally was going to. So that's kind of a nice positive. The Yukon's really beautiful. So the advice I can really give is just be kind of flexible, be able to roll with like whatever comes at you, be open to any project, even though it's really not the one that you signed up for. It might be something you become really interested in over time. And then just knowing that like, don't blame yourself when things don't go as planned. Like we were like, oh, we literally have like no control over this. There's a global pandemic going on, like, you know, and at the time we were like, these problems are small in comparison to the real problems out there, which was like that there was a raging pandemic. So I think, yeah, just being able to be flexible is the biggest takeaway. And then I think just knowing that like your supervisors will also understand, like, my thesis took an extra couple months beyond what it should have, I think, realistically, and no one blames me for that. And I think everyone understands that COVID is slowing everything down.